Today's announcement on student debt cancellation was welcome news to a great many borrowers, and not just graduates. As NBC News reports, the debt forgiveness applies to undergraduate, graduate, and Parent Plus loans. With us tonight, California Congressman Khanna. He personally took out more than $100,000 in student loans, faced the same struggles to make those monthly payments. Congressman, you carried student debt yourself. How big is this for borrowers?
It's a big, significant step. It's long overdue. You know, I took out over $100,000 of loans. There was a year I couldn't pay it back. I had to take forbearance. Now, I was fortunate. I was able to pay my student loans back. But you know what? I don't have any resentment that other people, other Americans shouldn't have to go through the same hardships that I did. I mean, it's crazy in this country. No other Western democracy makes young people take out $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of debt to finish their education. I'm glad the president did this.
All right, the big headline on this plan is the lump sum cancellation, $10,000 or $20,000, depending on if you have Pell Grants, but it also extends the payback pause through the end of the year. It caps monthly payments at 5% of income. Some of that fine print, how important is that?
Well, it's very important, especially right now where you have rents having increased, where you have gas prices up, food prices up, young people who are trying to make ends meet, they, as it is, are struggling. And so to ask them to be paying back their student loans right now with a difficult economy is just wrong. And I'm glad that the president is extending that time so that they can make their living expenses and not have the burden of paying back the student loans.
You alluded to this earlier, but the president was asked about the fairness of this policy after today's announcement. Take a listen.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses? If she wants these guys give them all a tax breaks, is that fair? What do you think?
And Congressman, I know you're going to hear this fairness argument over and over again between now and November. Your thoughts on the best way to push back?
Look, I understand that there are parents in this country who sacrificed, who struggled so that their kids could go to college. I understand that there are young people who took 2, 3 jobs to pay college, and I have so much admiration for them. I respect their resilience, and that's something that they will always be proud of. But just because they had to go through hardships, just because they had to do something that was unfair, taking out $40,000, $50,000, doesn't mean that's the way it should always be. America is a nation where we make progress, where the hardships of previous generations don't have to be the hardships of future generations. So I think we have to respect their sacrifice, but say that we can do better, and then no person should have to go into that kind of debt ever again.
Well, I think that's part of the fairness argument that you're going to hear. You're also going to hear a lot about how people who chose not to go to college, didn't have the opportunity to go to college, won't benefit from the program. So feel free to speak to that piece of things. There are also critics warning about the impact of debt forgiveness on inflation. What is the pushback there?
On vocational education, or people who don't go to college, of course, their loans should be forgiven as well. So let's make sure that this is clear. This applies to trade school, it applies to vocational school, and let's double down on investing in people who don't go to college. So the answer isn't to punish those who are going to college. The answer is to invest more in vocational education, trade school. On the inflation impact, this is not going to have any drastic impact on inflation. I mean, this is a forgiveness. People aren't paying the money anyway right now. There's been a pause. And so it's not like you're putting more money back in the pockets of individuals because they haven't been paying the loans for the last 2 years. So the argument that somehow this is going to be inflationary just doesn't add up.
So that is going to be all of the pushback from the right. I also want to ask you, there are, of course, progressives, they're activists who wanted to see more here. Can you give us a sense of what more might look like?
Well, I wanted to see more, too. I mean, it costs about $20,000, $30,000 to go to public college in most places in this country. I had to take out, like I said, $100,000 of loans for 3 years. So $10,000 is just not enough. It's not going to cover even a semester of tuition and living expenses. That's why many of us were pushing for $50,000. But I do want to acknowledge that the president deserves credit. He's the first president who has forgiven student loans. just like he's the first president who took major action on climate. And this is a down payment to a more just social policy, something we can build on.
Congressman Khanna, thank you so much.